atWork Australia would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and pay our respect to elders past and present. This podcast is being recorded in the southwest and Western Australia, which is land of the Noongar people. We'd also like to pay our respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from wherever you may be listening from. Welcome everyone to another episode of Candid Conversations with Shaun. In this episode, I speak to Katy, one of atWork Australia's job coaches, who works directly with our clients, supporting them to overcome their barriers to find meaningful and sustainable employment. Katy is also a person with lived experience of disability, and she openly speaks about some of the challenges she's faced throughout her life, and she walks us through her employment journey. Thank you so much for agreeing to come along today and have a bit of a chat with me about your experience of disability and your employment journey as well.
No worries at all. It's probably not going to be that exciting.
I'm sure it will be. A lot of people think that their journey and experience is exciting until they start talking, and it'll be very exciting to someone else. But I just wanted to say for our listeners, Katy has recently joined atWork Australia in the role of job coach. So she supports people with disabilities, injuries or health conditions to be able to overcome their barriers to be able to find employment. Do you mind if we rewind a little bit, Katy, and we go back? You tell us a bit about your own employment journey. What type of roles have you done in the past? And is this your first time working in employment services?
It is. Not only is this my first time working in employment services, this is my first ever office job, my first computer job, my first 9-to-5 job, and is the first job where I get to sit down on a regular basis.
It's a lot of firsts for you then.
It really is, yeah.
How are you liking it so far? You having to make sure you stand up and move around a bit if you're used to being up on your feet all day?
Yeah, I do. I get up. I can usually do the first 3 hours of the day, and then I've got to get up and, get a coffee and walk around. And then, towards the end of the day, I get really sort of jittery.
Yeah,
Not from too much coffee.
So. Yeah. I come from a trade background as well, and sort of coming into an office environment was sort of a bit daunting for me. How did you feel about making that transition?
Honestly, it felt like some sort of a dream. It took me probably at least a month to realise that, they didn't get it wrong. They had actually hired me for some reason.
No, I think from the conversations I've had, I think one of your skills might be your ability to be able to connect with people and get to know people quickly. You seem very much like a people person.
Yeah, which is odd because I tend to think of myself as more an animal person.
Maybe I'm just misreading the whole situation. So yeah, let's go back. So what are some of the jobs that you've done previously throughout your life?
I have worked for a landscape company. I've worked in a landscape yard. I've worked for a diesel mechanic, reconditioning fuel injectors, diesel injectors. I've worked at Coles and Woolies checkout checking. I've been a multi-machine operator at the Bega Cheese factory. That's my biggest employment. I did that for nearly 20 years. I've worked as a zookeeper in charge of reptiles and carnivores, and I've worked...
You must have a story there for us. What type of animals were you looking after? Did any ever escape on your watch?
There was a couple of times when I put snakes in particular out into their sunning enclosures, and you go at the end of the day to get them back in and you're like, where the hell is Ellen? I can't see her. And you start ripping everything out of the enclosure and the people are walking past and you're like, no need to worry, it's all good.
Yeah, because it's not something you want to get home from work at the end of the day and go, oh, geez, I forgot to put that python away.
Yeah, I did have one blue tongue got out of her sunning enclosure. And she was only very young, and she got out of the sunning enclosure, and she was just gone. And I went in there. I pulled all the weeds out. She was out. And then 2 days later, she came back.
Oh, is that
common? It was definitely the same. Oh, yeah, she probably got hungry. It was definitely the same one because she'd been injured, and that was why we had her.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do tend to come back to where they get food.
So where'd your career take you after that?
Then I went to a dairy farm where I worked as a calf raiser, and then I went and worked at a ag warehouse store. So they're kind of related. Yeah, and then I got here.
And tell me, you mentioned that this is something completely different for you. So why the change? What made you want to completely just shift industries and come and try something different?
Most of my previous jobs have been very physical, and I am not getting any younger. I've started developing a bit of arthritis and, a bit of sciatica and a bad knee. And I sort of decided that maybe a desk job was a good idea.
Here you are. And
Here I am.
I know in a previous conversation, the reason we were actually originally connected was you mentioned that you also live with a number of other health concerns that you've been managing as well. And ironically, you're now supporting people with disabilities and injuries to be able to find employment, but you're managing your own health concerns. If you don't mind, do you mind sharing about some of the other health challenges that you're facing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, as you probably remember, I have a hearing impairment, so I do use hearing aids usually, and that is largely industrial deafness from the landscaping and the cheese factory. I have depression, and well, then there's my family.
Maybe we won't touch on that one. So your industrial deafness, has that sort of progressed throughout your time working in the factory? Can you sort of explain to me how does that affect you day to day, and I guess how does it affect you in the workplace? What challenges did that cause for you?
There's a lot of watting. At the factory, it wasn't totally noticeable because I was always on the lookout for forklifts and things as well. But at home, it became more and more noticeable when I wasn't hearing what people were saying and my little brain was just inserting things that didn't make any sense. And I'd be like, why are you talking about an elephant?
Yeah, I can imagine how it could create, I guess, some funny scenarios. And like you mentioned, I guess in a factory environment, you're already wearing hearing protection, so you've got to be more visual and be more aware of what's around you anyway, because there's things around that can do some serious harm. But I guess now you're in this office environment. How is your hearing impairment impacting you in this new role?
The technology that's available for people with hearing impairments is amazing. My phone connects automatically to my hearing aids. So I hear people talking straight into my head when my phone rings. And that's really good. But basically, if I forget my hearing aids, it's going to be a bad day.
And what about in, I guess, general conversation with a person? Do you lip read, or do you have to really focus on what people are trying to say to you?
I do a lot of lip reading. Yes. COVID made that quite difficult with people wearing masks all the time.
Oh,
so
didn't even think of that.
Yeah. But I do a lot of lip reading. I have to see people. I have to look at them, which is why conversations over the phone aren't usually as good.
So the video calls would probably be a lot more beneficial for you then?
Yes, video calls where possible are better, definitely.
Yep. And when you're supporting your clients, do you ever share information about your own health conditions, or can you does that help you? Do you think that helps you to be able to relate to their situation a bit easier because you have your own experiences?
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, definitely being able to understand that the person is feeling that they're missing out because of their disability, if they're missing out on conversations or they're missing out on an opportunity. I can certainly relate to that. And whilst I always try very hard not to say, I understand, I think I do get it.
Yeah. And I know you've been since coming to atWork Australia, I know you've been very open by speaking about your disability and sharing information with the business. What benefits have you found from sharing information about your health conditions?
I've always found it better to just, come straight out and say that I am hard of hearing. So if I'm yelling at you, please don't think I'm yelling at you. It's because I can't hear myself and I yell. A lot of people do get nervous because I'm a big person and I have a big voice, and they get a bit nervous when I start talking loudly, and I'm like, no, I'm not yelling. I'm just yelling, which is totally different.
Yeah. Has that caused any issues in the community, or people ever make strange comments? 'Cause I know I mentioned to you that I live with a vision impairment, and a lot of the times when I use my phone, I bring it up really close to my face. And years ago, I used to have people make comments about, if it gets any closer, it's going to hit you in the face and things like that. Do people make comments about you being loud or things like that because they're unaware of your hearing impairment?
Probably, but I don't hear them.
And I guess what you can't hear can't bother you, right?
Yeah. I do tend to, like, if I get a phone call and I'm shopping or something, I will leave the shopping trolley and get out of the supermarket if possible, because I know that, I'm standing there yelling at a telephone and it can be disturbing.
Doesn't really make for a private conversation.
No, even if they can only hear my half.
Yeah. If we can go back there, you also mentioned that you live with depression as well. And
Hmm.
How has that impacted you in the workplace or your ability to be able to find work or even your day-to-day activities? If that's not too sensitive or you don't mind sharing, please feel free not to answer.
As far as in the workplace is concerned, I sort of I've sort of cultivated an alternate personality, if you like. So I have at home Katy and work Katy. And work Katy is happy and diligent and, likes vacuuming. And at home Katy hates vacuuming and isn't always that happy. So I think that was sort of initially my coping mechanism. I just didn't talk about stuff at home while I was at work. I was just a completely different person.
And do you find that can be exhausting at times if you're having to put on this face every day and going in pretending everything's all right when underneath you actually might be struggling with some things?
Absolutely. Yes. Completely exhausting.
And what have you implemented? Have you put anything in place to try and support you to manage that in a different way?
Not not really. I did drop down the amount of days I was working at the factory. So I went from full time to 4 days a week, nights because I was on night shift, because it just got so tiring. And yeah, my husband has sort of learned to read the signs and now he just backs away and hands me chocolate from a distance.
It's good that you might be able to learn and read the signs then.
Yeah.
A lot of time where the purpose of these podcasts is to try and build awareness and share stories and educate other people about the importance and benefits of inclusion. What do you think are some of the benefits of creating an inclusive workplace?
There are a lot of benefits to having people with different thought patterns around you, people that just don't think the same way that you do, and they can look at a problem in a completely different way. I know people who have Asperger's in particular make fantastic machine operators because they can look at it much more logically than a lot of other people. So, yeah, I think if you're not including people with disabilities, then you're cancelling out over half the population for no good reason.
Yeah, there is a significantly large portion of our population these days who do live with some form of health condition. And I think sometimes it's just people's lack of understanding of what that condition actually might mean. They might hear a condition and think it's completely different. So that's why we need to build awareness and educate people around what these conditions are and how they actually impact a person in the workplace. Is there any misconceptions or misunderstandings about your health conditions, or people assume or may wrongly assume about someone living with a hearing impairment?
People tend to think that because I didn't hear what you said, I don't care, which is not true. And I ask them to repeat it and they just go, oh, don't worry. And it's not because I wasn't paying attention. It's because I actually didn't hear you. That's probably my biggest, yeah.
I guess that can be sometimes frustrating for you then as well, because then you have to go on and explain, sorry, look, I do care. I was listening, but I just couldn't hear because of my hearing impairment, which then forces you to sort of have to tell more people, even though you might not have wanted to.
Yeah.
If you think about it in my situation, when people make comments about me looking at my phone, I'm like, I have a vision impairment. Sometimes I can't be bothered going through explain to someone's like, you have a vision impairment? What happened to you? And they're like, and you have to go through the whole rigmarole of telling, they want to know the ins and outs and the details of your whole life. But
Yeah.
and I know you've mentioned, if we change the direction of the conversation a little bit, you mentioned
Hmm.
in another conversation that you're also a mother to two children who are on the autism spectrum.
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
Can you tell me a bit about, what are your concerns for them, or I'm not sure of their ages, but have you thought about what it might be like or what employment will look like for them in the future?
Well, our oldest Sam is 22 and our youngest is 14. So it's a big gap. I don't recommend it if you can avoid it.
Well, I've
So
definitely
Sam,
gone. My gap is 3 years between three kids, so the third one's coming soon. So I've
oh
definitely jammed
wow.
mine as tight as possible.
Yeah, you've got like nothing but nappies for 6 years straight.
I've already had to get a second bin because we couldn't fit him in there. It's like the joys of my day.
Yuck. Yeah. Yeah, when Sam was in high school and like looking to leave high school, we were really worried. Like we were basically convinced that Sam was never going to move out or get a job or be able to function. And it was actually through Headspace that helped Sam to find employment as a parts interpreter.
Okay.
Sam aced the course. She finished the course in under a year. It's supposed to be a 2-year traineeship. So Sam finished it in under a year and got a raise, and their boss just absolutely loves them. So it was just such a weight off our shoulders when we realised that Sam was succeeding in that,
Yeah.
and that Sam was actually really good at it.
And I guess that gives you confidence for your younger child coming through, especially when they've seen their older sibling go through it and be able to be successful and find employment. That would give them confidence that they could then do the same.
Yes, that's what we're hoping. Yeah. Even though Sam is still living at home, which is more to do with the price of housing.
22, a lot of people are still living at home, so don't
Yeah.
expect them to leave soon with the cost of living at the moment.
Yeah, rent here is just non-existent. But yeah, having the motivation to get up every morning and go to work has really helped our younger child have the motivation to get up every day and go to school.
Yeah.
Because, Sam drops our younger child off at school on their way to work most mornings, and it's really helped both of them, really.
Yeah, I could definitely see she'd become a great role model for the younger child as well, and giving the young one someone to look up to and say she's done it. That's what I can do as well. So I think it's really important to be able to see others go off and achieve their goals and overcome their barriers. Because I know a lot of time for me, I really struggled to figure out how I was going to find a job. And when you hear about other people with similar conditions doing it, it helps you to believe in yourself and let you know that you could do it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And everyone wants to be like their older sibling.
They do. That must make this job you're doing a lot more personal, give it a bit more meaning, because of, I guess, what your children are going through and what you're going through as well.
Yes, it does. Job feels quite personal to me a lot of the time. I think that's why I'm having more difficulty separating work Katy to at home Katy while I'm here at work.
If you could, if I could ask you one last question, if you could speak to all the employers out there who might have hesitation around giving a person with a disability a go, what would your advice be to them?
Don't. Like, what have you got to lose? You could find a really dedicated, hardworking employee. Don't say no just because of one little thing like that.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
Open up your mind and look at what's possible. They could be the greatest employee if they're just given the right opportunity, the right support, and a supportive workplace.
Absolutely. And they'll be even more dedicated because they've been given the support and the chance.
Yeah. That's what we typically see. A lot of people with disabilities, they do struggle to first get that opportunity, but then they do stay in the job longer and become much more loyal to that employer.
And that's exactly what the employers want.
Exactly. Katy, thank you so much for taking the time today to come and share a little bit about your journey and your experience with disability. I really appreciated hearing your insights, and I'm sure people will take a lot away from hearing what you had to say today.
Thank you, Shaun. My pleasure.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of Candid Conversation with Shaun. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation with Katy and hearing about her inspirational journey and how she's been able to overcome many barriers in her life. As always, to find out more information about anything we discussed or how atWork Australia can support you on your employment journey, please refer to the links in the show notes.